So graphite is measured on a scale with H's on one end and B's on the other end. Notice there's markings on your pencil on the end. That one was an HB right in the middle. So the thing is, the further down the scale on the H's, the harder the graphite is and the lighter the mark that it makes. And for the B's, further down the scale, the softer the graphite and the darker the mark that it makes. So you have like a 2H, 4H, 6H, 2B, 4B, 6B. Another common one is a 9B. It is good to have a 4H and a range in between. 6B may be as dark as you need. This can do some pretty nice stuff, really bold black, but yeah, so graphite. So oftentimes you'll create a value scale, 0% being the white of the paper, 100% being black, and multiple stages in between. We're just going to create that scale using a short range of pencils we might have. 4H, and this should be a pretty light value. 2H, and I'm not really putting any pressure on these. You shouldn't have to. Notice that 2H is just barely a little bit darker. Again, very little pressure being applied. Now there is something that's happening here with the 6B. It doesn't really get totally black. One way to counter or to add to your value is to go the opposite direction. You have to be careful that you're not overly pressing hard on the paper though. What will happen is you will compress the surface and you will end up with just a shiny area and it won't really be black. Another thing you can do to help your darker colors is take your 4H, because it's very hard, and you can go counter to the direction you were going to start with on your darker colors. And what's happening is all those little gaps, those are indentations on the paper. You're using this hard graphite to push the softer graphite down into those indentations. And that will help with the appearance, making it even darker. So again, this is a value scale. which is essentially a gradation, a slow change from one thing to another. Alright, let's look at 3 different gradations, one using a range of graphite. I'm not going to try to make these perfect right now. I want to do this just nice and quick so you can see. There was with my 4H. I'll overlap it a little bit with the 2H. Yeah, let's clean up that 4H just a little bit. So again, it is darker over here on the right, but the softer graphite starts to round out your tip a lot quicker, and it doesn't want to go down into the indentations in the paper. And so using the harder graphite with a very nice point on it, you can get some of that soft graphite to go down into those little grooves a little bit more. Again, don't apply much pressure at all. You don't want to damage the surface of the paper. You would be compressing it. You're just going to make your surface shiny. That's not what you want. You just want to softly run your 6H or 4H over this in a direction that's counter to what your original direction was. And that's going to help you get graphite down into those little indentations. So if you do not have a range of graphite pencils and you're only using a single pencil, let's go with a 2B. The 2B is your pretty standard pencil. Just about every pencil you find is going to be a 2B. You've really got to have even more control so you don't darken too quickly. So the difficulty I'm running into already is that a 2B, it really isn't just a very dark pencil. And so I'm having to apply more pressure than if I was using my range of graphite pencils. And again, we don't want to apply too much pressure because ultimately you're compressing the paper surface, and it can only take so much of that before it just turns into a shiny, smooth surface, and it can't take any more graphite. So we're going to start running into the problem of how do we get darker with only a 2B. Again, I'm applying more force than I would like to. I am going to have to do something similar to the above. And I'm still applying more force. This is definitely not a great way to draw though, because all that force you're applying also kind of applies to your hand, and it's going to tire your hand out much, much quicker. Again, it's also compressing the surface of the paper, and there's a point at which this is all just going to become shiny, which is sort of counter to your plan of making it dark. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell in the video, but here in my studio, if I am looking at this from a little bit of an angle, boy, it's got a lot of shine to it now because I have compressed the paper. I've had to press harder. I really need to fill in. So to match the above, I had to put in way more work. So that takes us to working with a mechanical pencil. Oh my gosh, I'm probably gonna have to speed this up drastically because there's such a fine tip on there. It's going to take forever to fill this whole thing in. And I can already see that I'm really just making that surface shiny. So how dark can this little mechanical pencil go? Fairly dark, but man, I have compressed the paper. My hand's going to hurt after a little while of doing this. I broke my pencil or my lead from pressing too hard. The amount of time that's going to take. The 2B can get pretty dark as well, but again, you're applying a lot of pressure. And your hand is going to ache, and I've compressed and damaged the paper surface, so really it's just getting shiny versus a 6B pencil that is pretty black without all the pressure. Yeah. And also, if you're blending things, there's not much graphite there to blend. A little bit more there, but a lot more there. So can you do this with a mechanical pencil? Yes. Can you do it with a single graphite pencil but with only like a 2B? Yes. Is your hand probably going to hurt? Hurting hand. Cramping. Yes. Using a range of graphite is going to save you a lot of frustration, hand pain, cramping, and the light stuff barely smudges at all, so you're not going to end up messing up areas. Look at how much I have to keep rubbing on that light graphite to get any smudging. Most of the smudging from this area came from the darker graphite. So you can do it. Should you?